My topic is what impact do sexual and emotional abuse have on children and their development. Specifically, there are 6 children who have suffered from these types of abuse and now they have lifelong lasting effects from it. Rapid brain development during the first 5 years of life is crucial to stimulate and connect brain pathways. Tina, who was a young girl, was sexually abused by a 16-year-old boy. When she began school, she showed aggressive behavior, inappropriate behavior towards students, and she was inattentive. Psychiatrists believe it was ADD and oppositional defiant disorder, but because environmental factors play such a large role in the development of the brain, they figured that there might be something deeper inside that was creating these problems. From further testing, they believed that the early development of the cells that were trying to organize networks weren't organizing, but creating abnormalities in all parts of her brain. She linked all men to sexual behavior because she didn't know any better. In the end, the painful assault resulted in repetitive activation of stress response systems. The stress response were altered and therefore creating her problems in school. She didn't know any better. The second two people who were sexually abused when they were younger were Amber and Tia. They were both sexually abused and they both became depressed and turned to self-mutilation, causing their brain to release opioids and causing their emotional pain to become more physical, which was easier to deal with. Amber was found unconscious in the bathroom at her school because when she began cutting, there were too many opioids released in her brain, which caused her to overdose. She had very low blood pressure, and this was life-threatening. Tia also turned to self-mutilation, and they were both deeply depressed. The next type of abuse that I will focus on is emotional. The first person that I will talk about is Danielle. She was found in a filthy house with her mother, who refused to interact with her child. The only reason she was found or ever seen the house was because they saw her standing in the window. She was never touched, she was never sang to, never hugged, and she never felt love from her parents or her family. She was so impaired that when she was found, she hadn't learned any form of communication. She had no clue what the outside world was because she was trapped in her room for her whole life. She was 7 and she was 46 pounds, and when she was brought to the doctor, she was basically in a comatose condition. They knew she would become severely autistic from this impairment from her young life. She withdrew from herself, which is called environmental autism. She was at age 8 and she acted like a 2-year-old. When she was brought to school by her foster parents, they would refuse to take her because she would flail her arms, have temper tantrums, and she would act too immature for her age. It is important that a child has early interaction and is showed love when they are younger so that their brain can stimulate those pathways and that will help them become social and learn trust from their outside world. Danielle had no clue how to talk to people. She had no clue how to interact with anyone around her. The next 2 people I will talk about both were emotionally neglected when they were younger. The first one is Peter, who was adopted from a Russian foster care system. The foster care system neglected to interact with all of the children, and therefore they never had the pathways connected and stimulated just like Danielle. When they brought home Peter, they could tell he had impairments due to this because he was very socially awkward and he did not know how to socialize with anyone around him. The psychiatrist immediately knew that he was having issues because of his temper tantrums and aggression towards people around him. The next person, who did not name her name in her story, described her life as shadowed. Her mother wanted a boy, but all she had was girls. For some reason, the mother specifically neglected this girl, and she refused to give her any attention at all. Although this girl does not remember anything before 5, she does remember trying to reach out to her mother and trying to physically communicate with her, but all her mother would do was push her away and neglect to show her any love. This then made her depressed, and she went into emotional difficulties and turned to self-harm. It is apparent from reading about children who suffer from sexual and emotional abuse during critical times of development, develop at a slower rate, and are therefore left with lifelong effects which can leave a child severely impaired.